Good evening, everybody. I would like to welcome you to this extraordinary council meeting of Tuesday the 23rd of January 2024, being held at the Nagambie Lakes Regatta Centre due to the Arawa Conference Centre currently being unavailable for use due to storm damage. I'm Peter Stevenson, Interim Administrator of Strathbogie Shire Council, and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the places we live, work and play. We recognise and respect the enduring relationship they have with their lands and waters, and we pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Today we're meeting on the lands of the Taungurung peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation, whose sovereignty here has never been ceded. This public meeting is being streamed live via our website and made available for public access on our website, along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. Council considers that the recommendations contained in this agenda gives effect to the overarching governance principles stated in section 9.2 of the Local Government Act 2020. These principles are numbered 1 to 9 on page 2 of the agenda. Apologies. We have Amanda Tingay, Acting Director People and Governance, and Rachel Frampton, Acting Director Community and Planning. Any more apologies, CEO?
No, Chair, that's only apologies that we've received for this evening's meeting.
Okay. Are there any conflicts of interest to be made under Rule 108 of our Governance Rules in Division 2 of the Local Government Act 2020?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Point of order, Mr Administrator. On December the 12th, the Shire moved the motion that all meetings be held at the Arawa Conference Centre.
Well, okay, thanks,
Mr. So there's nothing in that agenda or items about meetings held anywhere else in the Shire.
Well, thanks, Mr. Marr. Thanks, Mr. Marr. As I pointed out in my opening statement, the meeting's being held here because of damage to the Arawa Conference Centre. Now, unless we want to have it out in the street, we have to find an alternative venue, and this is probably the only alternative venue that we could have live streaming and have people invited here. So, to be fair, when a building is damaged through a weather event, sometimes you have no other alternative.
Well, I'd raise the question, sir, in relation there is other venues in Arawa.
Well,
Shire. Yes, there is.
Well,
doing so, you talk about the cost of venues at Nagambie. Very clear on the page of your agenda for 12.
Yes, Mr. Marr, please. I've pointed out the reason we're here. If we want to live stream it, as we've said that we will, then this is the only alternative. To be honest, I'd be happy to run a meeting anywhere. Doesn't bother me, as long as there's a fan in this weather. But we need to live stream it, and we don't have the capacity to live stream it anywhere else other than here or the conference centre when the conference centre is habitable.
Thanks, sir.
It's not habitable.
I understand what you're saying, and I stand behind there is other venues in Arawa of the Shire of Strathbogie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marr. Okay. We did conflict of interest, didn't we? We did that. Public questions. The council for tonight's meeting that were consistent with the governance rules. We did get a couple of late questions, but not only Shire. So again, in terms of governance rules, they were not accepted. But we have 4 and the first one's Robin Taylor from Kerwin's Bridge.
Here's the second one.
And we'll just wait until whether all turns his phone off. Thank you.
So,
So So, Robin, I understand you want your questions read on your behalf?
Yes.
Okay. So, begin with a statement. I've almost had a head-on collision at the Hudson Road, Reedy Lake Road, Weir Road and Richards Road corner stroke intersection when a semi-trailer had to come across onto the wrong side of the road to get around the corner. How are you planning on making that corner safe and aligned with IDM guidelines with the current traffic count? The second question, with only a 4 metre seal and 1.5 metre gravel shoulders, how do you maintain the shoulders of the road? With floodwaters and daily wear and tear, the shoulders will degrade quickly and develop deep potholes and corrugations because all vehicles will need to move onto the shoulders to pass oncoming traffic. How do you maintain the shoulders so they are safe to pass, and if so, how often will you assess the safety of the shoulders? And 3, the road safety report says there is no public transport. This is incorrect. A school bus travels this road and will need to pull over onto the gravel shoulder when another vehicle is approaching. As a public primary school bus travels this route twice daily during school terms, would this have an impact on the safety audit recommendations? So in response to your first question, Robin, Weir Road currently has a number of trees that encroach into the road envelope. Therefore, to avoid the trees, larger vehicles prefer to utilise the centre of the road. And germane to that point, today a team of council workers have begun reducing the canopy on that road, and I understand that that work will be completed soon and should make some bit of difference to that part of your question. Or to the matters that raised that part of the question. The current design, now getting to the rest of the response, the current design has been reviewed by the road safety auditors, and they consider the use of the unsealed shoulder through this area will permit the passing of 2 large vehicles, and did not recommend any amendments to the design. A further review of the design by council officers has been performed of this intersection, and it's considered that increasing the seal width to 6.2 metres wide and applying centreline marking will further enhance the safety at this location, and the design will be amended accordingly during the construction of the project. And it is important to note that Weir Road is not a designated heavy vehicle route, but can accommodate vehicles required for agri-businesses. In relation to question 2, the wear and tear of the unsealed shoulders and the sealed surface will be completed in accordance with Council's road management plan. Council has considerable length of unsealed shoulders across the municipality, and subsequently we have established maintenance practices to manage this type of asset. And finally, in response to the third question, the context of the comments related to public transport using the road in the road safety audit relates to the road being part of a public transport bus route, of which this road is not. A school bus route is not a public transport route. The use of the road as a school bus route has no impact on the findings of the road safety audit. Again, thank you for your questions, Robin. Submitted number 2, Jackie Anton of Kerwins Bridge. I don't believe she's in attendance either. So I'll read her questions. A permit, there's 3. A permit for removal of native vegetation is required for this project. Officer's report indicates that work on Weir Road will commence prior to this permit being applied for, advertised, assessed and granted. Does this mean the permit will be granted and this application process is just a paperwork formality? The second question, what if there are objections to the native vegetation removal and the permit is refused? Will the road design need to be changed? And 3, the report states this design requires approximate removal of 37 trees. What is meant by approximate? How many trees will be removed? So in response to your questions, Jackie, I advise the following. The project to construct Weir Road comprises of rehabilitating existing pavement and sealing the resultant surface for a length of approximately 2.7 kilometres. The trees identified to be removed are those directly impacted by the construction of the road and generally are located at the cross-culvert locations. Due to the length of the work and therefore the length of time to complete the road's construction, it is considered that sufficient time is available to construct the road in locations where the trees do not impact on the road while the tree permits are obtained. Or should I say, sought. The design has been optimised as much as practicable to minimise the removal of trees and the protection of many trees to reduce the impact on the native vegetation. The exact number of trees requiring removal will be determined by the arborist performing the assessment of the trees and subsequently the value of the native vegetation offset. Once this assessment has been completed, the actual number of trees to be removed will be identified definitively in the planning permit application. Should the permit for the tree removal not be granted, the road at these locations will be required to be redesigned for their retention. And this redesign work may create minor delays in the completion of the project at these locations if required. The options available for the tree's retention will impact on the operation of the road, as it will require further reductions in the width of the road carriageway at these locations. This will possibly result in sections of the road operating under alternate one-way conditions, like the conditions employed on one-lane bridges in days gone by. And I'd stress here that the tree removal permits are not a paper formality, but a clear requirement of the planning scheme processes where the community will be provided with this level of detail for consideration without holding up the entire project's construction. Just a sip, excuse me. That was a mouthful. Our next questions are from Des Mason of Kerwin's Bridge, who also not in attendance tonight. And he begins by stating, for the record, I wish to express my concerns that the community views and suggestions have been ignored. You intend to proceed with this construction without addressing the dangers at the junction of Weir Road, Hudson Road, Richards Road, Reading Lake Road. Two reports have both indicated concerns of the road design as referred to in the CAF engineering report, stating they have concerns that vehicles will cross to the opposite side to negotiate this corner. Also, the report by Red Square Traffic on the detailed design road safety audit, section 4, item 4.1, page 12. Auditors cannot guarantee that every deficiency has been identified, and if all the recommendations in this report were to be followed, this would not guarantee that this section of road is safe. Rather, adoption of the recommendations should improve the level of safety for this road. Also for mention is the reference on page 26 of the same report, which states both vehicles turning at the Nagambie, Rushworth and Weir Road must have both outer wheels on the shoulder when passing. How will this method be achieved at the four-way road junction, and what are your recommendations for the corner in question? The second question is the design, and starts with the statement, the design to proceed with Weir Road construction without any floodplain study report, a plan for future flood mitigation, or a design for water diversion in place, the road will still create a hazard for travellers on Weir Road and create further flooding to landowners. Contrary to the Agenda Officer's report, notes for the extraordinary Agenda Officer's report notes for the extraordinary council meeting, at least 3 landowners adjacent to Weir Road have not been contacted or approached by any representatives of the Shire as to the level of work to be carried out and why a flood water is not taken into account in the planned construction of Weir Road. In response to your questions, I advise the following. Please be assured that officers have considered the views and suggestions raised by the community seriously, and this is why an independent road safety audit was conducted to review the current design. Just prior to the meeting and having looked at the response for this, the Chief Executive, myself and manages sustainable assets and infrastructure, had a conversation about the level of consultation, and we can't guarantee that everyone was spoken to, but we'll ensure to make that good where we can. This isn't the end of a process. It's still relatively early days. So if we've missed landowners, we'll make sure that we get to talk to them and understand their issues. Now, getting back to the road safety auditors, they consider that the current design with the use of the unsealed shoulders through this area will enable large vehicles to pass safely, and they did recommend additional amendments to the design. Following further meetings with the community, officers have since reviewed the design performance of this intersection, and it is considered that increasing the seal width to 6.2 metres wide and applying centreline marking will further enhance the safety at this location, and the design will be amended accordingly during the construction of the project. In response to the second question, Weir Road is not within the current flood or land subject to inundation planning overlays. Subsequently, information to provide accurate flood modelling for the road is not available. Council does acknowledge that during heavy rain events, water is gathered on the land either side of the road and pools against the road formation, inundating the road surface previously for generally short durations. These events are considered to be localised flooding and not significantly influenced by the Goulburn River and Lake Nagambie floodplain. The road design has been elevated in a number of locations to provide for additional pavement thickness and improvements to the longitudinal grades of the road to provide appropriate operating speeds for the road. This has generally lifted the road, and in locations where water crossed previously will provide some relief to possible future inundation events. However, with the flood overlays, without the flood overlays to inform the design, no additional work can be completed on this aspect of the road's design. And given that point I raised about the consultation, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think. Obviously, we will perform that consultation, and where necessary, to ensure that we are providing the correct level of service, such that the road is clear of the localised flooding. We will modify the design as required, and I believe I've got the time to be able to do that whilst it's still under construction.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Okay, our next questions are from Robin Weatherall of Euroa. I can see Robin's in the orders. Do you want to ask your questions, Robin? No, you'd prefer they be read for you.
Appreciate you doing the job, sir.
Okay. Okay, so it begins with a statement. The last audit of traffic flow of 320 on Weir Road, Nagambie, out of date. Current traffic flows show significant increases. Summer traffic with no Kerwins Bridge indicate more than 20% increase. What steps has Shire taken to upgrade data supplied to road safety audit process? Will Shire conduct an urgent review and audit of traffic use of Weir Road? So thank you for your questions, Robin. And in response, whilst the most recent traffic count on Weir Road occurred in May 2023, traffic counts are not a guiding principle for the decision on the standard of construction of the road. The protection of the existing native vegetation while providing the highest level of service to the travelling public was also a primary objective as reported to Council at the August and September 2003 Council meetings. The proposed design for Kerwins Bridge will function in the same manner as the current roads condition, apart from the improved level of service provided by the 4 metre seal and more appropriate pavement materials used in the wider sealed shoulders. The standard of construction for road classifications does not alter from one classification to the next until the traffic count reaches 500 vehicles per day or greater. It is acknowledged that the current volume is close to this amount, and ongoing monitoring of the traffic volumes will be performed, as will Council's endeavours to obtain state and or federal funding for the reopening of Kerwins Bridge to relieve the traffic volumes on Weir Road. And that concludes the public questions. And we have just one officer report, CEO, and
That's great.
And if could give a bit of a summary of the report, 8.3.1, contract number 22-23-01, Weir Road and Reedy Lake Road.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The report that's been submitted for consideration tonight provides the background of the design process for Weir Road's construction, the process for the construction as well as the community and the independent road safety audit outcomes to develop the current design and the outcome of the negotiations with the contractor to have the project delivered within the current approved contract value. I don't intend to just repeat verbatim what's in the report. I'll take it as read. The recommendations are there for your consideration, taking into account the questions that were asked and the answers provided. So I'll hand it over to yourself to ask any questions as you so desire.
So I do note, and this has been around a while as an issue, and I do note there are differing views, even in the room tonight, I expect, around how the road should be fixed, resurfaced, whether trees should go or not, and if so, how many. But I guess if you could just simplify the, how would you put it? So there's we're going for a minimum number of trees somewhere around 37, and the potential otherwise is something like 200. Yeah,
That's correct, Chair. The infrastructure design manual for the volumes of traffic within the municipality, regardless of, in fact, the volumes of traffic within this municipality, looking at the different states of collector and linkage, etc. roads, starts with 6.2 metre wide seal with 1.5 or 1.0 shoulders. When that design was used to run the initial design development for this particular road, it was identified that was significant number, i.e. in the order of the 200 trees would be impacted by this particular standard of construction, which is in the order of all of them. There wouldn't be many of the trees left. In previous reports to the council at the August and at the September council meeting, there is a provision within the infrastructure design manual that enables us to depart from those design standards if, in fact, anything that we perform as part of our asset maintenance impacts significantly, particularly on native vegetation. So it was taken, the decision was taken at that time to reduce the standard to a 4 metre seal and 1 metre shoulders, which when discussed broadly with the community, there was some concern, as well as with the council officers, the council laws at the time, and it was an independent road safety audit to determine whether the design was appropriate was requested at the September meeting. We anticipated that report would be submitted to us prior to Christmas. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It didn't arrive until just in the new year. The report did indicate that the design that we come up with the 4 metre seal and the 1 metre shoulders was appropriate, but it did recommend that we consider widening those shoulders to 1.5 metres. And so the council officers took the opportunity to do that. It also recommended that we put up quite a number of additional advisory signs, in particular speed advisory signs, particularly at the intersection that's been mentioned a couple of times tonight. And so we've implemented those recommendations of the Road Safety Audit Report to install those signs as part of the project. After that body of work was completed, we revised the design, and we then went back to the community at the reference committee for the Kerwins Bridge community panel, of which numerous members of the community expressed some additional concerns. In particular, they asked me to obtain further advice on the safety of the intersections as per their concerns about that, and those were expressed in some of the questions that were put today. Because those intersections weren't explicitly discussed within the initial report. That information was provided back to the Road Safety Auditor, and they have come back to us and indicated, as you've heard in the responses to the questions, that they still considered, even though vehicles did have to use the unsealed sections of the road, particularly at the Reedy Road, Weir Road, Hudson Road, and there's one more. Thank you, Robert. That intersection, that there was some concern about that. It is quite a sweeping curvilinear nature. As a consequence of that, after discussion internally with the officers within the council, we took that into account, particularly as a consequence of the feedback I got again, even as late as last week, prior to the Kerwins Bridge meeting, and we've considered that the 6.2 metre wide seal at that location, with the solid centreline painted, and obviously the 60 km/h advisory speed signs at that location, will allay some of and respond to some of the concerns of the community in that location. And on that basis, we've agreed to do that for that in particular, that intersection. The balance is with the 4 metre seal and the unsealed shoulders. Currently, Weir Road has it's actually material that was obtained from the mine. There's a mine in Ngambie of which this cheap material comes from. It's the material itself can be quite coarse and quite fine, etc., and it's difficult to maintain because of that nature of it. The materials that we will use ultimately for the shoulders and for the whole pavement width is substantially more appropriate and will take far less maintenance, and so therefore it won't experience the rutting and the potholes that the current materials do. And some of the experiences that the residents have experienced, particularly when they get the high levels of traffic, which were experienced as an example at recent events. It was there was a community event. I apologise, I can't recall the name of it. Something or other in the fields. I can't remember it, but there was a substantial, unusual increase in traffic, and it did smash the road to bits, and we had to grade it immediately after it. With the seal, what that will do is it will increase that level of service to the broader community. It's a 4 metre seal is not something that's not considered appropriate within the road design guidelines of the country. It wasn't considered as part of the IDM because the councillors at the time, when we were putting together our road management plans, I should say, considered that a 6.2 metre seal was a better level of service, and it is. It is. In this instance, however, we're looking at it from a holistic point of view, looking at the road is quite straight. There is substantial existing trees along this particular road. The volumes of traffic are considered to be satisfactory for the use of a 4 metre seal, and therefore passing on the unsealed sections. We acknowledge the concerns of the community that have been expressed, where they are concerned that because of the application of the seal, the speeds of the vehicles will increase. We hope that the community does perform as it does in every other 4 metre seal, and there is a number around the municipality now. And they haven't got the protection of the adjacent trees, etc., that this particular road will have, because we are protecting a number of trees. But generally you'll find that the speed of vehicles will slow down, of approaching vehicles, so they will naturally move across and travel across. Because of the material that we're using in these shoulders is substantially less in size than the larger particle size that we've currently got on the existing material on the road. It's quite a large, sometimes 40 or 20, larger 20 to 40 mil size, stone size, breaks windscreens, etc. The material that we're proposing is the class 2 crush rock, which is the highest class of crush rock that is used at that base level. It will hold together substantially better, and it won't have quite as much of the issues associated with windscreen breaks and those types of things. It will still create dust because it is an unsealed surface. But we consider with the traffic volumes that are on the road, even less than the 500 vehicles a day, it will provide a satisfactory level of service.
Well, thank you very much for that question, the answer to that question without notice. Put you on the spot, but what an answer. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Now, we're giving Darren the opportunity to speak for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I just wanted to give two things, perhaps. One is some perspective for you on some of the background to where we are today. And the second point is just to talk a bit about what's referred to in the pack and on some of the governance principles. So maybe I'll start with the perspective. I'm sure you've been appropriately briefed on the history of this road project, but I just wanted to reiterate what the community was saying back in April 2023, which was really a key juncture in deciding to proceed with this contract. And what the community was saying at the time was, if the community was asked, do we want this road resurfaced, or do we want the money spent on expediting the reopening of the bridge? The overwhelming majority of the bridge reopened instead of doing this road. Okay, so now I understand the horse has bolted potentially on that, the decision's been made. So now you're in one of these positions where you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. So that really brings me to the governance principles that are talked about actually in the pack. And the key one for me is that one of the guiding principles is that priority is to be given to achieving the best outcomes for the community. We want minimal disruption, and that's been promised at the outset on this project. And seemingly this, what I refer to as a piecemeal stop-start approach on this construction while we wait for permits, is not ideal. We were promised it will be quick and short, and now it's clearly going to be elongated, potentially, for an unknown period. The second priority is that flood mitigation was also promised. The flood of October 2022 has shown the flood surveys are out of date, potentially. And if we're spending additional money, which we are, $750,000 to raise the road, we want the flood mitigation to be effective. How can you know that if the new surveys are not done? Why wouldn't we wait? And the best outcome is to focus what the council has in terms of finite resources on the bridge. That's the community view. And the traffic counts at peak period have not also been undertaken. They were promised at the last meeting that they would be revisited, and they haven't. And I think the question is that the traffic count will clearly be a lot higher in peak periods, and it hasn't been considered. The second governance principle is transparency. I read the pack and I'm trying to work out what's the rush now, because after all, we've been waiting It was meant to start in September 2022. We've been waiting this long. Why would we not wait for some of these issues to be brought forward and considered at the same time? We wrap them all together and we make an informed decision. And I guess there's only two more. The ongoing financial viability of the council is to be ensured. That's a guiding principle. To me, it's not good governance to be proceeding with a project that, one, has an uncertain outcome, potentially, and the cost, the true total cost, is yet to be determined. So what I mean by that is that there's no monetary value on the offsets, the prolongation costs are not known, there's no detail on the removal of the permits, will it or will not be granted. And the final one is really the legal considerations around this contract, okay? Seemingly, we have a situation where the council may in fact be liable or potentially in default under this contract for additional costs. If nobody knows when the contract can actually be finished, how do you actually determine the liquidated damages? Okay, this contract can go on for a long time. If the tree permits are delayed, weather, there's a whole range of things. So how do you determine the cost? How do you settle with the contractor without knowing? And what you're saying, what we're considering here is that we want to start without knowing any of that. So I'm recommending the better decision is to reschedule for a short period. Of course, the community wants a decision on this contract, but why wouldn't you wait? So an informed decision is to reschedule with all of the facts that I've mentioned to hand, and then you can make a final decision.
Well, thank you, Darren. And look, I think I'll just draw you to the last paragraph. The last paragraph of the report, the recommendation. The cost of the contract excludes the contingent liability for the prolongation claim, and you mentioned that as well. Yes, there is a question about what it might be, but we know, sure as eggs, that if we don't start work, that's still ticking. It started. So we're paying the contractor whether they're working or not at the moment. So, and the decision has been made to do something with the road, and that's a separate thing to the bridge. So that's not something that's been considered. And if money was there, we could walk and chew gum at the same time. The money isn't there.
If I could, Chair,
Yeah,
could I speak to some of the points?
No, not right in our governance. No. Anyway, yes, sorry about that. But yes, it's as you say, it's been going for a long time, and I think I was at that April 23 meeting. It was the first meeting that I had as monitor, and I think I've been to a couple more where the matter's been discussed. There are people keen to get work done, and I appreciate that there are some issues, but we think we can get it started and still get a good outcome, despite the fact that there is a question about the planting permit for the trees. And so, on that basis, I'm moving that the recommendation becomes a resolution, and as such is carried. And there being no further business, the meeting's closed at 6:04 p.m. Oh yes, the next council meeting will be Tuesday the 6th of February at 6 p.m. and we'll be back at your role. Hopefully repairs will have been done, and we'll see you there, Tom.
All going well.
All going well. Just don't pray for rain, all right, Tom?